Black CEO laughed at for using black card at hotel, cancels 2.8B deal. Instantly, CEO who was made fun of for using a black card at a hotel quits $2.8 billion deal right away deal. She walked into the hotel hallway wearing a sharp navy blue suit. On the marble floor, the sound of her shoes echoed like the quiet steps of power, but when she gave him the Centurion black card, which is a sign of wealth around the world, what she got from the clerk was not respect, but a sneering laugh. Most likely full. They didn't know the black woman. They didn't know that the company A card in her bag could make or break a billion-dollar hotel chain. Certainly, they didn't know what the cost of an insult that seemed okay would be. The business would fail as a whole. This story isn't just about, or it's about how a woman was insulted without yelling or making a scene. With just one 2.88 bill, they were able to reveal a whole system of discrimination, cloaked in the name of top service. Billion deal she cancelled woke up an entire business. The door slowly turned around. Danielle Whitaker, the black CEO of Dominion Equity Partners, was one of the women who came in, most important names in international banking. She wore a dress that was expertly tailored. Her black patent shoes and navy blue suit with sharp lines that hugged her tall frame. Every step she took, a firm and modest, clicked, a sound test for the large, powerful area that you can do alone, without anyone else. She didn't say anything because she didn't need to, just being there made the point. Lobby stopped for a moment as curious looks flew by, along with a few sly looks from the on her right. A group of guests was waiting for champagne in the bar. These people weren't used to seeing a Danielle wasn't a black woman working as a waitress, maid or housekeeper. So she wasn't in that situation. Those things. She went straight to the front desk, where Ethan was standing behind it. The clerk was a white man in his early 30s, with slicked-back brown hair. Ethan was trained with neat hair, a nice outfit, and a shiny gold tie pin. 5 stars for customer service, but he looked very cold and sneering at her. When he served people he didn't like, his eyes quickly went to the food, looked at Danielle's shoes, then her Armani suit, and finally her face. A smile that was almost imperceptible flickered for a moment at the "Good afternoon, ma'am," Ethan said in the corner of his mouth. His speech was flat and cold, and his smile was forced. "How can we help you?" "Today?" Danielle put her Chanel bag down on the bar and took her phone, looked at the email confirmation of the ticket and spoke calmly. Her voice was steady and clear. "Whitaker, Danielle. I've booked the presidential room for 3 nights." Ethan looked at the screen, and for a split second the name made his pupils freeze. After a moment of thought, he looked at her again, but this time with more interest. With great care. It wasn't a professional observation. It was a quiet assessment. His mind was on whether the woman in front of him was really the owner of that name. There was a lot of quiet for a short time, but it felt heavier than... While Stone Ethan typed, he looked at her again and then kept going. Despite his smile, his speech had a tone of indifference mixed with a hint of ridicule that only people who knew him well could pick out. Discrimination could find, "Oh, a black card. Those expire pretty fast." The words didn't seem important, but they were said loud enough for everyone to hear. A couple sitting near the front desk took a quick look at Danielle. In a grey suit from the lounge, raised an eyebrow and squinted as if he were seeing a quiet play out in front of him. Danielle didn't move at all. She didn't smile, frown, or do anything else. She kept her eyes cold, but not angry. They were sharp like metal. She knew what had happened and that Ethan hadn't seen the card. It was the only thing Ethan saw about her that made him feel bad. Blunder of his life. Danielle didn't change her face or sound mean. In the blink of an eye, she slowly took the card out of the small leather pocket in her bag. It was a solid titanium black card with no words on it. It had a thin silver edge, and the Centurion card is heavy enough to make a loud clink when it hits the glass desk. Not for the rich, but for everyone else. You can't sign up for powerful. Ethan took a quick look at it for less than a second. And in that split second, he let himself judge. Oh, this one. His voice was casual with a hint of anger. Most of the time, those are maxed out. No one laughed, just quiet. The words that came next made them sound like a slap in the middle of the fancy, quiet lobby. A few people turned their heads. A middle-aged woman on the couch creased her face, and the front desk worker looked over, clearly worried. He was being rude to Ethan, but he didn't notice because it was just a passing comment. Every day at this front desk, test power was still played, especially with people who didn't dress right, talk properly, or have the right skin color. Danielle raised her eyes and looked Ethan straight in the eyes. Now, the look in her eyes was as cold as ice. It wasn't angry or hurt, but it was still enough to scare you. Like the water's surface that had dried up, showing the cold stone below. She didn't. Responding, she just stared at Ethan. He stumbled a little, but he didn't show it in his face. He stiffened his hand on the keyboard a bit. He knew he had gone too far, but on the other hand, his pride, which had grown from months of working behind a shiny hotel bar, pushed him. He asked, "I'll check to see if we have a room for you," which meant he typed quickly on the machine and said word "you" in a mocking voice. Giving her a place to stay tonight was a great way to do her a favor. Gesture from the rich to the poor, but he didn't know which hand it was. Laying on the glass, had once been given contracts to buy 6 multinational companies. And the story that this woman was going to give birth to tomorrow could cost the Lancaster Grand Hotel Group $2.8 billion to $8 billion, a world expansion investment. And the only thing Ethan had in his hands at the moment was a lethal prejudice. Ethan looked up and smiled after a moment. But it wasn't a nice smile anymore. It was a stronger, more self-satisfied one. On the 9th floor, but not the presidential suite you described. It looks like the system didn't prove the... He paused for a moment and then said, "Must be a problem with the... I guess it's a card." Danielle didn't answer. She just gave a cold nod and took the card back, slipped it into her bag. She moved slowly, as if she wanted to record every detail. Into the face of time, she dropped her head slightly, not to give up, but to, "I'll take the room," she politely said. Her voice didn't shake, but anyone could hear her. Anyone who paid attention would have seen that behind that calm wall, something was about to break. She turned, and as she left, the marble floor rang with the sound of her steps. Even though there wasn't a rush, there was a promise that was kept with each step. The game hadn't even begun yet, but someone had already lost. Ethan watched her leave and then did. He had a moment of doubt when he looked around and saw a few eyes on an older man, shook his head at him, and the clerk next to him didn't say a word. The room seemed to stop for a moment, not because of what he said, but because of Danielle stepped into the lift with her eyes slightly closed, because the mood had changed. In her mind, every detail, the words, the look, the system, was already linked. She knew the room wasn't free because of a technology glitch, so she didn't come here to let the doors slide shut behind Danielle, leaving her behind. Even though the steps were strange and the front desk was a mess, Ethan Garrison stayed. He stood there with his hands sweaty for some reason he couldn't explain. There was something about this woman's look, attitude and quiet that he couldn't get rid of. Steady calm. But Ethan didn't know or wasn't aware of it. He knew that since he had just brushed past a woman, he didn't have the right to guess what her full name was. Danielle A. Whitaker is the CEO of the global company Dominion Equity Partners at the moment, an investment company in Washington, D.C., that focuses on looking at mergers, growing global brand lines with a focus on fairness for everyone, standards for business ethics and against discrimination. At 43, Danielle had graced the Fortune, named her a game-cherin, and put her on the cover of Forbes Women in Power, Global Banking, which she looked into, and brought down 3 high-end hotel chains in Europe within 90 days because employees broke the rules about how to treat immigrants and black guests. And she didn't come to the Lancaster Grand today for a vacation. She came to watch, listen, and most of all, decide if the two-pointy-T. She thought the $8 billion deal between Dominion and the parent company of the Lancaster Grand Hotel Group was a good one. Image. The deal was meant to help Lancaster Grand grow in Dubai. Its market value has grown to over $8 billion thanks to Singapore and Cape Town. But before any numbers were agreed upon, Dominion's review team, led by Danielle herself, had already gotten more than 43 private reports and stories of complaints of discrimination, mostly from black customers and African staff, not only from low-level workers, but also from past managers and small investors in a hotel chain that said it'd be expensive, but secretly used a soft choice strategy for customers based on race and social class. Danielle had been quiet for a month while gathering and having her staff sneak into 3 towns where Lancaster Grand does business. Now she was in New York, which was the center of the system, and where she was seen as the brand advocate of the final check of the whole chain. And in the first 10 minutes, Ethan Garrison gave her the simplest answer is that you don't need to get more information or call anyone for confirmation of the way he looked at her from head to toe and how he made fun of a guest as a way to gain personal power, especially the way he openly judged a black woman's ability to pay her bills with a sarcastic remark. All of that proved every earlier theory, as when true Danielle walked into the luxury room, they had put her in the room instead. Was clean and well-equipped, but the room had bay windows that made it feel like you were outside. They didn't have the Breville coffee machine they said they would, which was the most important thing. Nobody cared about how it was done. She opened her laptop and saw an Excel sheet already open. Her Lancaster Grand added the first line right away. At check-in, the flagship site didn't follow VIP protocol and racial profiling was seen. Below, it was a timestamp with information about the encounter, the staff's behavior, and a note about the high-risk sign of public embarrassment. Danielle wasn't mad, she wasn't shocked, because she had seen this too many times in London, in Munich, in Jakarta, and now she was in the place where she went to college. But what this time, she couldn't keep quiet because Ethan wasn't just ignoring her, he was ignoring. There are 3 times as many smart black women who work twice as hard, but are still blocked by eyes that don't think they belong there, like his. People have biases in this world, but when those biases are part of the service system, they become There was an unwritten rule that she had to get up, walk to the window, and look down at the brightly lit. It was getting purple below 5th Avenue in New York. But Danielle felt like something had changed inside her. Slowly changed. Just like the last gear clicking into place tomorrow, she would go to the lobby, work out at the gym, and call room service. And everything they did, every look, every sound they made would be a sign. Because the game started as soon as Ethan spoke the next morning, as the soft sunlight poured in. When she went into the lower-tier room where Danielle had been demoted, she was already promoted. She got up early, not because she couldn't sleep, but because she was very well ready for the second day of her short business trip. Today, she wasn't wearing a suit on a trip that could decide the fate of a kingdom. I wore a simple grey midi dress with flat shoes and a thin sweater. She looked more like an accountant or a normal expert, with no guile. Not a hint of power, just enough to make them let down their guard, and Ethan wasn't at the bar when she went downstairs for breakfast. As the guards did, the staff member who was there was younger and seemed unsure when she saw her room. Number of times she might have read a report from a co-worker, but her hesitancy quickly turned into a cold pose. Buffet breakfast was still being served in the area set aside for diamond card and suite guests. Danielle held her room key. The kind of key that should have let her into that area but was at the front door. A worker stopped her and said, "Sorry, only suite guests or those with lounge access are welcome here. My room number is 9 or 16 and I booked the executive package." "The system says you're not allowed to enter," the staff member told her as they looked her over from head to toe. She felt like she was trying to get into a place she didn't belong because she needed to say more. Danielle pulled out her phone and took a picture of the room key and quickly made a note that VIP lounge access was refused. Even though executive booking staff avoided racial profiling by using a casual tone and eye contact, the pattern was correct. It wasn't a mistake or a system error, it was a choice. She took her time as she walked past the concierge desk, and two workers on her way back to the main lobby stood behind and had a quiet chat. One of them was a man he tilted his head and spoke quietly but clearly. He was about 40 years old and had platinum hair. "I don't understand why they keep bringing people like the words in this piece were clear and color wasn't mentioned. It didn't say anything about a black minority or a diversity goal, but it was all once thought about. It was there all the time, like the smell of cracked paint in a castle." Danielle wasn't going to turn around or say anything, but in her mind, she was. Each piece of proof was stacked like tiles to make an indisputable case. Indictment. When she went back to her room and opened the checklist again, new things were marked in red. Of lounge entry rights, even though they booked under the executive package, is clearly unfair. Staff at the concierge desk didn't check the system before rejecting the request. Services language that seemed to be racist. Then she put in another. "Keep in mind that this is not a one-time thing. The behavior system is all touch points," made it clear that the system was stratified and exclusionary. Danielle stopped and leaning back in her chair outside the window. New York was just as busy as ever, but in her thoughts, the pictures of what she had just been through were no longer her own story. Tens of thousands of women just like her have stories like this, made to make them feel like they don't belong. No need for no entry signs. There were no taunts, just cold smiles, long looks, and a few words. Make someone question their very presence in a place where they belong. That was the biggest crack in empires that were happy to be global, high class, and luxurious. Danielle knew that these cracks always start when people stop seeing others as people and only as numbers. Non-priority customers or, even worse, casual bothersome people that night, she went on. Trying out the services by calling room service, making a spa reservation, and asking for the gym opened early, and every staff member responded, whether they were talking to. It was time-stamped that she answered quickly and briefly or even ignored her. As a safe video file, no one knew that this quiet lady was the one who could start a probe into the whole Lancaster Grand system. Take back the money it invested, and give it a C grade in business ethics. Stock in the parent company could drop 30% in less than a week because of that. But no one knew they kept going even further down the familiar hill, where Grey took over power. People like her always got the cold shoulder because they wore suits and had white skin. She looked at her watch and decided that tomorrow she would talk to the front desk directly. No longer an event. The next day, at 6:15 p.m., it would be an interrogation. Danielle put on a classy black party dress that night and did her hair in a neat bun. She left her room with a small bag in her hand and went to the hotel restaurant for dinner. She wasn't with an assistant or security or any other signs of power like the other VIP guests she was with. I just wanted to know how a black woman walking alone would not introduce herself. The Lancaster Grand's restaurant was a treat for the rich and famous on the top floor, which was lit up with warm yellow lights and quiet conversations of people drinking wine. The floor-to-ceiling windows gave a view of the busy skyline of New York below. The area near the windows was a secret area for the rich and famous, where people could eat and be seen eating in the right. Danielle walked up to the front desk and smiled softly. "I have a ticket for one person at 6:15 with Whitaker." The young woman at the desk, with her brown hair pulled back and her name on a tag, Megan looked up, her eyes frozen for a moment, split second too short to notice unless you were paying attention, but Megan quickly checked the system and then told Danielle, "Yes, we have a table for you, but the one by the window is already taken. I'll take you to a table inside." Danielle quickly looked out the window and saw that 3 tables were empty. Empty. No reserved sign, no flowers, no water glasses already set up, and a man's server. While he was wiping down the table by the window, he looked quickly at Danielle and then at Megan. Danielle didn't say anything, but gave a soft nod inside as a way to signal her answer. "Okay." She followed Megan to a table near the back wall made of frosted glass. A few rows away from the windows, she sat down, took off her coat, and she pulled out her phone and hit the hidden recording button in the lapel of her coat, which is a common trick for senior citizens. 5 minutes later, inspectors were doing field checks. A middle-aged white couple walked in with no reservations and nothing special. Requests, Megan saw them, smiled big, and led them right to a table by Danielle sat still by the window and drank her water. Her eyes never left she hid her phone screen under her arm. Her heart didn't beat fast, and her hands didn't tremble. But on the inside, sadness had turned into conviction. Following dinner, she went to the 3rd floor to check out the gym. At the front desk, a young security guard member took her room key and turned it over as if looking at a fake. "Excuse me, you said you were in room 916. I need to check with the manager, because the gym is only open today to people who have made a ticket ahead of time." Danielle didn't say anything. She just watched the white guy in sportswear behind her. There was no room key or reservation. He was led in right away with just a small nod to the staff. She smiled. "That's fine," she said without happiness as she got her room key. "I'll go to a different gym." As she left the gym area, she stood in front of a big hallway mirror and fixed her hair. The quiet reflection showed the hair of a woman who was sure that all of her doubts had been put to rest. Put together to make a clear picture of discrimination, at the check-in refused lounge, a table by the window was carefully checked while a white guest was not allowed to enter, led in right away, and none of it was overt or meant as an insult to the people, but the fact that it was dressed up as fake professionalism made it even more dangerous. Unwritten rules, quick looks and soft rejections. Danielle went back to her room. She moved the video images and sound from the camera to her computer. During the behavior analysis, each piece of proof was neatly put together like bullets. In a room that turns around, she didn't need to be mad or talk to them about it. It was clear that she would go back to the front desk tomorrow, but this time there was only a business card with a name on it, not a room key. This is something they should have checked right away. There was no judging when the door to her room shut behind her at the end of the day, and there were no tracks in the hall. Danielle took off her glasses when the receptionist desk looked down at her or rolled her eyes. She took off her shoes and coat and walked over to the desk made of walnut wood next to the window. Her laptop. The desk lamp now cast a soft glow across the room. There were lights in New York that looked like a star map outside. But inside her, the campaign had just started, and the screen showed the protection interface of Dominion Ventures' own system. Danielle opened the DVP Audi report file, T0422LGNY, which she made 3 weeks ago, has grown to 47 every page, every part, and every video clip from her hidden camera over there is a full list of violations of VIP check-in for the last 2 days. How things work at the front desk. Item 2, illegal denial of lounge and access to the premium service item. 3, inequality in the own restaurant item. 4, different treatment of room keys in the gym item. 5, racist comments from service staff on every item were clearly backed up. Image samples, descriptions of the people involved, timestamps, and the risk. If reviews of the brand were made public, it wasn't just a case of bad service. It was a deep-seated quiet system that kept black buyers, especially women, out. She typed one last note. Into the file, not a single mistake, not a one-time event. This is a behavior model that is kept up by training with silent language and an internal power that is not watched. Lancaster Grand doesn't just need to be fixed up. It needs to be held responsible. She hit send, and the report went straight to 3 teams. Crisis Communications Management and the Legal Department are in charge of looking over the Dominion Ventures Ethics Council will have just one short meeting tomorrow to talk about business contracts. Morning and the $2.8 billion deal that was supposed to be made public, would Davidelle sat still for a few seconds without smiling or letting out a sigh of relief. There was no short-term feeling behind her actions. She did them because it was her job. The promise she made a long time ago to speak out when others stay quiet. She reached for her herbal tea and took a sip in the quiet room. It was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner and the noise of traffic outside. But in her thoughts, the last few pieces had come together to make a whole picture. A picture of white people who were comfortable with their power, and those who believed it was enough for them to wear a uniform and a name tag to stay at the top of the pyramid. Danielle took out her phone and sent a short message through the internal, "I'll meet you at the front desk at 8 a.m. No need for security, no need for a secretary. I want to go by myself." The answer was just one word. She put down her phone and pulled out a black business card from her purse. There is only the Dominion badge and the words on a simple silver border. It caught Danielle A. Whitaker's attention for a long time. She is the Senior Director of Global Stock Compliance. This small piece of paper had once made a CEO fall to his knees at one point, it led a European hotel chain to shut down its shareholders' meeting, whole Eastern European branch, and it was about to be the last one. Danielle put down the business card so Lancaster Grand could hear the welcome. Put it on the desk next to her laptop as a quiet morning invite. She got up, shut the blinds, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. But that sleep wasn't from someone who was done with their work. It was from someone who was about to do something. 7:55 a.m., exactly on time for the face-to-face meeting she had planned. Danielle showed up exactly where she did 2 days ago in the lobby of the Lancaster Grand. It had become a place for ridicule and prejudice because of Ethan Garrison. She wore a suit again today, a deep blue one, blue, with a neat, pointy collar and a small triangle silver pin that represents because of the Global Justice Review program she had made. Her face was barely made up, just enough to let the light bounce off her dark brown, healthy skin. She walked straight to the front desk, not looking left or right. Her eyes were hidden by long eyelashes. There was no need to wait. Ethan quickly looked up from typing something on the screen. For a second, he looked over her familiar face, and then he smiled, the same one he had been using to hide his dislike. "Good morning, Mom. How can I help you?" Danielle stood tall and didn't smile. Her voice was calm, but every word she said was clear, cut like a blade through the air between them. "Good morning, Ethan. Do you know why I was treated like a fake here?" His smile wavered a little. Danielle turned her head a little and said, "What are you talking about? You were making fun of the Centurion card on the first day of my downgrade room, even though the booking document said they couldn't get into the lounge. The staff at the diner and gym were unfair to me, and the little comment your concierge mumbled about another publicity stunt." Ethan gasped, and his face turned pale, as the people around him looked like someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. The morning receptionist and a few guests who were waiting to check out started to stop by their room. Danielle didn't raise her voice, but her words were loud enough for everyone in the hallway could hear her as she opened her purse and took something out. She put the thick black business card with the silver border on the counter-attack that was so quiet it didn't make a sound, but was strong enough to feel like a Danielle A. Whitaker is the senior head of global compliance at Dominion. He looked at the words for a moment before he was able to think of anything else. It hit him, and when it did, his face lost all of its color. I don't know why he felt the need to say that. She cut you off, and I didn't come here to hear your story. She took the business card back, but she didn't leave, so I went to tell her. You should know that Dominion sent the final report on Lancaster Grand to the company ethics board. Investors and the foreign press team were all stunned. Ethan froze and couldn't speak any longer, and I also came to show you how a seemingly harmless an insult can bring down an empire. She turned to leave, but before she could, Danielle stopped a few steps in and asked, "Had there just been one?" Please take a moment to say the word correctly. I would have been the one signing the deal for your plans to grow your world market. She slightly turned her head and looked at him. It was as cold as ice. But you picked to make fun of a black woman instead of checking her out. Name? Ethan seemed frozen. His hand was shaking so badly that he couldn't press the keys. At that very moment, the internal phone rang, and the receptionist ran to answer it. Pick it up, listen, nod, and then look at Ethan with a shocked face. "Mr. Ethan, the CEO, just called and wants you to come to his office." Almost right away, a person nearby whispered, "What's going on here?" began to record on their phone. The story wasn't over yet, but Ethan knew that his part was over. "Do you know what you just did?" Danielle asked again, her voice calm, but when it's as cold as glass below freezing, you lose more than just a customer. She took a moment to look into Ethan's confused eyes. It's like losing the future, she thought. She took a firm step away and didn't look back at her steps, the marble floor in a steady rhythm. But Ethan thought that each step was like a hammer blow to a decision that hadn't been reached yet. Arrived, but the lobby was as quiet as death. A middle-aged man wearing a business suit who was waiting in line to check in quietly took out his phone and pressed record. The black woman, who had just left, didn't need to speak up. She could yell or threaten with just a business card that she had made herself. After 10 minutes, Space Holds Its Breath for a 43-second movie went viral on Twitter with the title, "Dominion Equities Black CEO Confronts Lancaster Hotel Front Desk and Can't Say a Word." Daniel Whitaker, Blackguard Power and Know Her Name quickly became popular hashtags. The rising trend at the same time on the building's top floor, where the Northeast Regional, the executive office of Lancaster Grand, was found, and an emergency meeting had already started. The investment company called the area CEO, Richard Coburn, who is 58 years old. The second call from board came less than 15 minutes after the first call from when Dominion Equities lawyers showed up. There was no welcome, no introduction, just one sentence: cancel talk, stop all PR growth activities. Look over the legal papers. All the information will be made public in 12 hours. Cobb said as he slammed his hand together, yelling into the phone while sitting at the table. But no one was paying attention because they knew they had just lost $2.8 billion, and it wasn't because of Daniel. They never even stopped to look up Danielle Whitaker's name. She hadn't yelled or caused a scandal. Someone who just showed up, told the truth, and let the system fall apart from its own pride at the time. At the same time, an IT engineer was frantically trying to find the internal control room of the hotel. Danielle's chat with Ethan was caught on video to manage the problem, but no one could figure out how to get rid of the original video clip shot by a third party. Guests. No one could stop the wave of millions of shares and thousands of angry comments that was going around. I worked as a server at Lancaster Inn and was not allowed to use this area because I am black. 2021. Everything she said is true. I saw Ethan kick out a friend one time. They didn't need to tell the truth because they didn't look like the person who made the ticket. Defenders, it woke Ethan up. He stood at the empty front desk and listened to the phone ring, repeated over and over, but he could no longer make out what was going on around him. He seemed to blur, and after 4 minutes, a spot of white noise filled his ears. A woman in a grey suit from HR walked up to him and looked at him, stern. "Ethan, please go to the executive office with me." Right away, without any reason or comforting words, he then left the front desk, where he had once thought about his own stage, and the eyes of the guests who were no longer interested but were now criticizing. And Danielle, she didn't go back to her room. She left the hotel through the back door. She was trying to stay away from the chaos that had started behind her like an endless fire. She wasn't in a hurry and wasn't looking at her phone. She saw what was going on Twitter and knew she didn't have to stay to see it because she had already seen it. That was all there was to it. One word, one business card, and the truth. Didn't take more than an hour after Danielle left the Lancaster Grand for the video that caught her. The fight with Ethan had been talked about all over social media like a storm. It first showed up on Twitter, and then within 30 minutes, it was on TikTok and Instagram loops. Reddit and a lot of other groups were talking about racism in hotel services, and 12.4 million views in 24 hours for women's rights, 1.6 million shares, and 362,000 comments in the first 24 hours early in the morning. And the hashtags started to show up. They weren't from Dominion's media team, not from mainstream radicals, but from regular people who had experienced something like that. But there wasn't a loud enough black woman with powerful Danielle Whitaker is not your hoax. Hank checked the name before you. Judge Hike Lancaster showed up. A storm of anger grew from everywhere. But it wasn't a wild, unorganized storm. It was a storm with organization, proof and a base. What else did people see in the tape besides a black woman being Danielle's calm look as she was made fun of showed that she felt shamed? They saw a small business card with enough weight to make the whole system work without having to yell, shooked, and they saw something. Discrimination doesn't have to be yelled at to be seen. It's in the eyes and words that seem innocent because of who could be trusted, and who was sure it wasn't just regular people speaking out. Analysis posts from reporters at the New York Times, The Atlantic, and NPR. Trevor Noah's talk show in the evening began with the line, a black card, a sarcastic note, a business card, and a lesson for people who still think they're in charge of power. Danielle did not speak, but she was talked about on CNN, CNBC, Vox, and even the BBC as one of the new signs of politeness. Someone who was determined, not anger, to show how the luxury business was still working behind the scenes on a while at Lancaster Grand, a basis of exclusion and white privilege. The whole building was in a mess, and the receptionists were stressed out. No. The ticket phone stopped ringing because it was full of questions, not because it was busy, because it was being cancelled. But that wasn't the case with Ethan. Many of Lancaster's partner hotels stopped doing business because it got bad enough. Relationships, a London-based financial group pulled out of a $600 million business deal with an international airline, was no longer selling holiday packages. But the worst ones were the personal. In the comments part of the video, thousands of black people talked about their experiences at Lancaster Grand, and the staff here once asked me, "Are you sure you're in the right place? Where is that place?" When I got to the lobby, I was told to go to the employee door. Even though I was dressed for work, my mum was asked 3 times in one evening to show proof of her ticket. The media called this the Danielle Whitaker effect, but it wasn't a big deal. Outburst and then went away. It was a turning point where fancy and polite discrimination was made public, and people who had been sufferers now had a real way to fight back. Face to trust to follow. Danielle didn't have to give a speech that day. She put her message on a business card and left it on the front desk. Everyone read it. All the respect she had never been shown by 5 p.m. That same day, just under 90 minutes after the video of Danielle's fight with Ethan got viral, an emergency meeting was called at the main office of Lancaster Global Holdings, which is the parent company of the Lancaster Grand Hotel Group, is on Park Avenue in Manhattan. Only 7 board members showed up in person. The other four joined via Zoom from Paris, Dubai, and Tokyo. There was no time to find fault with the PR team or wait for an internal review. The video of Danielle Whitaker and Ethan Garrison was played back with no voiceovers or cuts. There was a lot of quiet for 3 minutes after the auction. And then one of the investment board members, Lois Freeman, a person from Equinox Capital, came right out and said, "We're not facing bad PR. We're looking at a piece of evidence that could prove someone guilty at Lancaster Grand, New York, that the atmosphere had become as thick as a storm about to hit the region." Director Richard Cobban, who had ignored more than 10 reports of unfair treatment from the front. During the emergency meeting at 1:45 p.m., desk staff were fired right away. For Ethan Garrison, who was proud of being the trustworthy front desk worker, was fired right away and told they couldn't come back to the office or send a goodbye email to the staff, and had his access to the company's computer systems taken away within 10 minutes. Feedback from the last 24 months was sent to a separate audit unit, which had never happened before. Since its start in Lancaster, the high-end travel company Voyage Elite has booked all 17 VIP events, had already signed with Lancaster for the whole year. A chain of financial seminars that had planned to hold its yearly event at Lancaster, London, said it would be moving the event to the Hilton Mayfair, not because of bad service, not because of price, but because the hotel industry's brand image had finally gone bad. On several sites, an anonymous letter with a scanned copy of there was a resignation letter from the head of operations for North America sent straight to the company's chairman. "I have told you about the front desk staff at Lancaster Grand News' quiet, exclusionary behavior, York toward black guests, but all of the feedback was being looked at. I can't keep being an organization that stays quiet when it needs to move R.D. Brooks, COO North America Operations. The news started calling it the Lancaster Incident. No, it is no longer a scandal, but a case study used in MBA schools to teach risk management, branding, and people who know what they're fighting for have a lot of power." The HR departments of more than 60 Lancaster hotels were told to look over all of their employee training processes, and internal reports from the last 2 years had to be made public to Dominion Ventures' independent accountants. This is a requirement if future, even though talks were still going on, the situation could not be controlled because of how quickly the video spread. But Danielle was a sign of a black woman who wasn't yelling or demanding extra rights, not slamming the table, not having reporters or a live show stream. She only used their system to make her business card for them. A branding expert told them to show the rot under their fancy exterior on TV. Lancaster didn't fall because of a mistake, the Evening News said. They fell apart because they were too proud to admit they didn't have the power to judge other people. They thought about the fact that the person they were rating might be the one making the rules. The grand building was still there, its glass reflecting the New York sun, but on the inside, the walls were broken, so everyone knew this wasn't it was the dead body of a brand that didn't change before the revolution. The truth came knocking while the Lancaster event was still going on. News stories in all the major publications on the 39th floor of Dominion Ventures, offices in Washington, D.C.'s in the financial district. A choice was made with just a nod that was harsh but quiet. There was no news conference or public meeting. There was only a private 42-minute meeting with the 7 members of the Director of Company Ethics and the head of Dominion's executive team of managing investments around the world, and Danielle Whitaker, the woman who had put the Lancaster Grand's reputation at risk without raising her voice at 10:43 p.m. The head of the board, Angela Raines, said, "The whole $2.8 billion partnership deal is done, with Lancaster Global Holdings will be cancelled right away because of the failure to follow the rules of business ethics and to break structural equality principles." The probe report was posted on Dominion's website by noon the same day. Each chapter was a slap in the face to the rich picture, with no extras or dodges. Lancaster had tried to keep up. The Lancaster Hotel Company shows a pattern of race, gender, and social class favoritism in its front desk service and how it handles customer feedback across its most important places. The violations are not unique, not just isolated events, but repeated patterns that are supported by the lack of noise to middle and top management. Was right below the conclusion. It was marked with an italic, "Ventures doesn't put money into places that build castles on exclusion lists," like the hotel business was in surprise. No one saw this coming. The deal was once called the deal of the century, planning to open 27 more Lancaster Grand hotels in Asia, the Middle East and South America, to disappear in just 72 hours because a black woman said, "I deserve it." Financial brokers ran away from Lancaster Global stock like it was the plague just 48 hours after the market value of the company dropped by 26% after the news. Business Insider released a cold. There was a story called "From the Heights to the Depths." Lancaster lost $2.8 billion just because they couldn't read a business card. Over 70 proposals from other hotel groups that wanted to start over were sent to Dominion's strategic department, the new rules for business ethics, because they knew what would happen if they didn't. If they don't change now, they might be the next person to go under the knife at Lancaster Grand New York. There were still shiny brass plaques on the walls that said, "Tradition of excellence since 1924. Walls, but guests only looked and then quietly turned away. Trust isn't broken by a crack. It falls apart when the base is shaken, built on lies. And Danielle stayed quiet with the media while she was in charge. When the meeting with the chairman was over, she only said one thing: "I didn't do this, for I did it for all the other people who can't go through that hotel lobby without being known as a risk." The room went silent, not out of fear, but out of respect for a woman with a business card. A calm voice and a strong will had changed the course of a whole company, from the nod that started the $2.8 billion deal in the office of Dominion Ventures, set off a chain of events. It quickly spread like an underground wave that was quiet but strong and could not be stopped. No longer was the event at Lancaster Grand seen as a time of bad press or the one-on-one experience of a VIP guest turned into a sign and a powerful wake-up call. For the whole world's hotel business, luxury was no longer described by, not because of the sky-high ceilings and high room rates, but because of how they treated the people who came through their doors in the 3 weeks after Dominion made the investigation report public. It was revealed that more than 40 hotel chains around the world, including well-known ones like the Aurelius Hospitality Group, runs Monarch Residences International. Some people in the Meissen Ara Horizon collection didn't wait for the media to push their hand. They looked at their hiring, training, and customer service procedures on their own. They are especially good at what they do in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. As a result of a number of new rules, blind hiring potential profiles would have their names, pictures, gender, and country of origin hidden during the first call round of choosing to get rid of unconscious bias. Training must be done through simulations. Virtual reality training for everyone at the front desk and in management, to act out situations of unconscious bias and get feedback on them. Minorities like black people, LGBTQ+ people, and handicapped people would get separate poll forms were used to make sure that feedback about discrimination wasn't lost. 247, an anonymous hotline where workers can report abuse in the workplace to protect complete privacy without going through the buildings. Management Ernst & Young started a new service called the Ethical Hospitality Audit. This is a service that deals with created for the hotel business, and based on what happened in Lancaster, the service was called Whitaker Standard. And in their opening speech, an EYA rep said, "A woman walked through the hallway and left a business card and something else as well. The case study set a standard for the global hotel industry at schools like Harvard Business School and called the Lancaster collapse was added to the approved curriculum. They taught it not only to look at the numbers, but also to help students understand that company culture doesn't just mean start in PowerPoint. It starts at the front desk with your mood and the way you look. PR firms and brand management firms were shocked to find a stranger in the media business, forced to change how they handle public relations crises. An expert from McKinsey wrote in an internal report, "You can't win people over if the company isn't running smoothly. If you want to see real change, you can't change the word it comes from." Getting rid of the system that made those wrong words. Danielle didn't join the spotlight. She turned down offers from TED Talks and turned down nominations for Woman of the Year from 3 well-known groups. She refused to take a cover picture for a while. Not because she didn't like it, but because she knew this wasn't just her story. A co-worker of Danielle's at Dominion, "She wants to be the starter, not the center," he said at one point. She didn't just punch the old building. She also called for people to stand up for what she did. There were changes in every field that had ever been asked to take a step back, not for the money or the attention, but because one person wouldn't keep quiet when someone insulted them, who didn't have to yell or call the press, just a business card, and having the courage to stand tall when her name, Danielle Whitaker, became a sign in the foreign hotel business, while everyone was still amazed by the Lancaster effect and the woman who earthquake shift kept getting to work on time with a black coffee. No sugar and changing reports on her 15-inch screen like nothing had happened. There has been no spotlight, podcasts, or self-written journey pieces. She didn't make any changes to her LinkedIn profile, tweet about her thoughts, or accept any publishing offers. To write a book when email alerts from talk shows asked her to talk about women's Danielle only gave a short answer when asked about the rights racism or the inspiring trip. Line from her secretary saying, "Thank you for the invitation." But Miss Whitaker doesn't accept. Talks, but not right now. Her Dominion office didn't have any fresh flowers, no awards plaques, just a small framed picture of a black and white picture of her grandmother as an anesthesiologist in Mississippi in the 1960s. She was kicked out of a hotel when white guests said that someone like her organized their clothes. Danielle remembered that as a child, and she knew when wrongdoings become a being against culture doesn't have to be flashy. It just has to be exact one day. A writer from the New York Times who had written an honest article on someone who was at Lancaster left an envelope in the locker at Dominion's front desk. There was a scribbled letter in the office for Miss Whitaker. "You made the world shake," it said, without saying a word, "but people like me need to hear what you have to say." 3 days later, the reporter got a reply, but it wasn't a story or a speech. Just a small piece of paper folded in half and Danielle's personal signature. "I don't have to say anything else because they already saw it. They said it better than anyone else, and Garrison had his say. In the high-end service business, professional records have been blocked. Richard Coburn is the regional. The director went into hiding and wouldn't talk to the press. People who used to shake hands with Dominion at bargaining tables now bowed their heads as they learned the rules again. Of behavior from the bottom up, she didn't punish anyone. When they were shown the truth, the system they built let them down. Danielle still worked on deals behind closed doors, so no one outside of her company would ever know about them. She didn't want anyone else to know about them. She planned justice using data principles and looked at it through the lens of the media. And a dead quiet that hurt. She told a young co-worker, "They expect I don't want black women to scream, be mad and tear the sky apart, to look at themselves and ask, why are we scared of someone who doesn't hurt us?" She didn't want to get even. She needed results, and she got them, but not in the form of a huge win. Danielle Whitaker's business card showed a change that went all the way to the ground. Doesn't just break a deal, it also starts a bad guy named Ethan's fall. Garrison was a man who used to work at the Lancaster Grand front desk. He had a half-smile on his face and looked at people with care. Ethan Garrison's name had never been heard because of the color of their skin or the way they spoke, been famous. But after a film that was less than a minute long, he became a symbol for the whole world, for haughtiness and lack of knowledge, dressed in style within 24 hours of the video. The internet community found Ethan's whole personal information after it went viral. LinkedIn, work history, an old Twitter account with lots of subtle ones, like people with a black card who dress like housekeepers. It wouldn't be odd if he talked about how nice discrimination was an art form in private groups, was saved as a picture and made public on job sites like Indeed and Glassdoor, right away marked his name, stopped him from signing up for LinkedIn, and deleted his account after getting over 10,000 reports of breaking community rules. A group of old friends tried to. Just one audio clip wasn't enough to support Ethan. He was just doing his job. Oh, this kind of thing usually gets maxed out really quickly. From the video was enough to destroy all of his defenses. He tried to get a job at a small hotel in Vermont, was turned down as soon as the boss saw his name on the application in Maine, where he tried to change it, hid his name, and applied to work as a wedding servant. But a guest knew who he was and to take a picture, and that picture was on Reddit within 2 hours with the caption, "The guy who spoke badly about a powerful female boss is now pouring, having wine at someone else's wedding is the definition of karma." Ethan eventually went to a small Wyoming town where there aren't any big buildings, the news, or anyone who cares about it. He rented a log house, stopped using social media, and made changes to his. He never left the house without a hat, glasses, and a coat with a high collar. His friends were the only ones who knew who he was. There's a report that a guy who did something bad online is now living in. While he was alone, his mental health started to get worse, not because he felt bad, but because he wasn't the gatekeeper to the top world like he used to be. Ethan thought that he was the one who decided who could enter the hotel lobby. He believed that his cold look, his casual statements, and his internal routines were enough to drown anyone who made him mad. But he picked the wrong person. Danielle didn't fall apart. She didn't look for help. As payment, she just pulled out a business card and let the system find him. Some say Ethan is a pitiful case, while others say he is just the result of a subtle, unfair setting. But as a reporter for The Guardian wrote, Ethan not destroyed by the media, he was eaten by the image he used to judge other people. What did Ethan lose? That's no longer the question. Who are there like Ethan? Still thought they didn't need to change. Danielle Whitaker never came back to Lancaster Grand, not because she was mad or trying to avoid memories, but she didn't need to go to that building with its crystal chandeliers and marble columns. There are still chandeliers there, but it's not the proud fortress of a fancy hotel. Hotel Empire has turned into a live reminder of a shared failure. Not being able to see the person behind the skin and the card, Danielle never came to win, to measure, and once it was done, she let the truth do the rest. There's no need for a microphone, pity, or to talk about how hard things are for her. Just a respectful presence, not a bow. Somewhere, people like Ethan are still alive. There are still front desks that you can't see in hospitals, schools, companies, and airports. People are judged by the color of their skin, their name, their accent, or the way they wear their hair. There are people like Danielle out there who could choose to be quiet to make life easier, but she still spoke out. She didn't scream for justice. She made the system should take a good look at itself and take it apart, because sometimes there is no blood or broken bones at the start of a change. Someone wouldn't keep quiet. So a question was asked of the person who they thought they were, the judge, after Lancaster Danielle was still at her desk, working as usual. The window still drank coffee black with no sugar. But this was the first time in years that a group of interns from historically black colleges asked to work in her area. And when she asked, "Why?" answer. "Because I want to learn how to speak," said the young woman. "I will not raise my voice." This story doesn't end at Lancaster Grand. This isn't just true for the hotel business. It's true for all businesses. A place that judges instead of serving any system that thinks is it too big to ask? The question isn't for Ethan. It's for Lancaster in the end. It's for you. When something bad happens, will you hang your head and move on? Or will you stop, turn around, and put a business card down on the table like Danielle did that? Because sometimes you don't need to yell anything. Danielle Whitaker's story isn't just a success of peaceful protest, it's also a story of courage. With steel-like calm, it's a strong warning that injustice doesn't always happen. Scream it can come with a mocking smile, an irritated look, or a rude comment in the lobby of a hotel, but justice doesn't always have to be loud. Only one person was brave enough to stand up and say enough. So how about you? Have you ever been laughed at because of your look, skin color, gender, or background? And if so, how did you react? Be brave and share your story in the comments below. You never know, your story could help someone else wake up. If you think this story should be shared, please like, share, and follow. Do not miss real-life stories about how a regular person can make a big difference. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The following trips.